Good afternoon, for the record. I have been avoiding your company for a couple of days, seeing how things have evolved and seeing how you, the media, are receiving information and receiving the spin and how it's moving. So, a couple things came up recently that have given me pause, maybe even alarmed me. So, I wanted to talk to you about it, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have about it. Rejected ballots. I saw in the papers today a letter from retired Lieutenant Colonel Booms, I believe his name was. And in that letter, he made a statement that was false. And worse than being false, it was incendiary. It was designed to incite fear, distrust, and to aggravate a section of our society. So I thought that I would try to explain, in the context of his statement, how the system works and why his statement is false. And then I want to have a discussion about GCOM and the distinction between GCOM, which is three-party loyalists on one side and three-party loyalists on the other side, and then the chairman that has the casting vote, as opposed to the secretariat, which under the Constitution acts on the instructions of GCOM and not otherwise. The secretariat doesn't have its own independent brain. The brain is GCOM. GCOM tells the secretariat what to do. So to deal with the discipline services, the joint forces, the system of elections understands that the joint services can't vote the same time we're voting because they need to be present on election day to keep the peace, to make sure everything's all right, to monitor what's going on, to do their job, and us ordinary citizens go to vote. So they vote before. They vote a few days before. Their ballots are kept. And then on election day, after everyone else has voted, there's a process that is given the fancy label intermingling. The ballots of the joint services are intermingled into the ballot boxes of the rest of the voters. Now, you're aware already, because it's been said ad nauseum, that each place of poll has its unique number. A 6-number stamp is given to each place of poll. And when you go to vote, you have to make sure that your ballot is numbered and has that number, that rubber stamp, by that place of poll. The reason that's important is it means that a corrupt polling agent in one station can't collect some extra ballots and run over to the next polling station and put those ballots in there. It locates the ballots at that place of poll. Of course, this won't work with the joint services because when they vote, they're not voting at a place of poll. They haven't opened yet. So when the joint service member votes, his ballot is not stamped. But at the time of the intermingling, what happens is you take all of these joint services votes and you divide them up into batches of between 30 and 40. So you got between 30 and 40 ballots, and you put each of these batches between 30 and 40 into various places of poll at random. So you're going to give it to the presiding officer at the place of poll. She collects 30 or 40. She stamps them with the 6-number stamp of her place of poll and throws them in with the other ballots. From the time they are stamped and thrown in with the other ballots, they're indistinguishable. You don't know if it's my vote or if it's Lieutenant Jonas's vote, because they have been thrown in and they're now identical. So the presiding officer stamps them and intermingles them with the other ballots. But at each place of poll where you go and give them joint services ballots, it's only 30 or 40 you're giving them. That's how you divide it up. To make sure this corresponds with the numbers now in the boxes that are being counted, an entry will be made in the logbook. Received 30 joint services votes. So that I know if my list had 100 voters, then you see 130 people vote, you check and you see the corresponding entry, receive 30 joint services, you know 130. Everything is good. That's how the system works. Lieutenant Colonel Gomes, forgive me, in today's Starbuck News, in his letter to the editor, made the unforgivable statement to the joint services, the members of the joint services, who are hardworking, patriotic Guyanese, just as interested in this politics and in this process as we are, that 8,000 of their votes are not being counted because some imaginary PPP agents didn't put the stamp on their ballots. So I want to go into the system. First of all, as at yesterday, 286,000 ballots have been counted. Of the 286,000 ballots which have been counted, 2,600 have been rejected for one reason or another. 2,600, less than 1%. So when Lieutenant Colonel Gomes says 8,000 people have been disenfranchised, he's telling a lie. Because so far, the total number of rejected ballots is 2,600. The total number. So where he got his figure of 8,000 from is anybody's guess, although I have seen it bandied around in certain circles. But it is false. But I want to talk to you about this number of 2,600. 280,000 votes counted, 2,600, less than 1% rejected. A vote will be rejected because it doesn't have any X on it or any mark, because it might have 2 X's, or because it might have the name of the voter or some other indication of his identity, or for any other reason like that, where you cannot see who he wants to vote for, because he put his X outside the box or not in line with one of the party names. Or a vote can be rejected because it doesn't have the stamp. Now, from my time counting in there are many more instances where you're seeing 2 X's. Some people got X's along all the parties' names, or no X's at all, or you cannot identify from the location of the X who the person intended to vote for. There are many more ballots rejected for that reason, many more, than because there's no stamp. So of the 2,600 rejected ballots, only a small fraction of that is rejected because there's no stamp. That's the second thing I want to tell you. And third, if you pretend that 8,000 votes have been rejected because there's no stamp, and the system is that these ballots from the joint services are intermingled into the boxes in batches of 40, then you're saying that 200 places of poll had a corrupt group of people, APNU, PPP, GCOM, and all the observers, who saw these ballots come in and saw these ballots thrown into the box without being stamped. That's the mathematical number. It would have to have happened 200 times. Now, given that in Region 4, the largest region, we only got 800 places of poll, you're talking about an enormous issue. But that enormous issue, logistically impossible as it is created from the imagination of a letter writer who has not informed the public that so far you got 2,600, not 8,000, 2,600 rejected ballots. And those 2,600 aren't all unstamped. Most of them are because the people, they put the X in the right place, or they write the name, or they put 2 X's or 3 X's. So we are giving incendiary false information to the joint services. And if I was a member of the joint services and I saw that, I would be riled up. I would be angry. So I want to say to the joint services that this is not true. Look at the facts. Look at what has come out so far. If there are only 2,600 rejected ballots, how on earth does somebody talk about 8,000 disenfranchised voters? It's beyond credibility. It's not even a spin that makes any sense. It's just an outright lie, and it is designed to rile people up. And I reject it and I condemn it. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about was a statement by Mr. Aubrey Norton, standing right here. I'm sorry, not Mr. Aubrey Norton. He's another problem. By Mr. Vincent Alexander, standing right here. That the GCOM Secretariat have written to Immigration Services to conduct an investigation as to the bare and unsubstantiated allegations by APNU agents made during this counting process that some people who are ticked off by GCOM officials, APNU officials, and PPP officials as having voted were out of the country. I find it worrying that one member of a 7-man commission can take it on himself to come here and make that statement, when in the same breath, GCOM is saying they don't know anything about it and didn't give any such instructions. So the question I have to ask is, if Alexander's statement is true, that the Secretariat is doing this, have the Secretariat gone rogue? Are they acting on their own without instructions from GCOM? Now, I have no confidence in the Secretariat. We know who their members are. The CEO is Owenfield. The next one down is Roxanne Myers. The next one down is Hetzberger. I don't know these people personally, but I've seen their actions, I've seen their conduct. I think we can all agree none of them have voted PPP. So how is it that this Secretariat is doing this on its own without the knowledge of GCOM? How is it that this Secretariat can take on itself, not GCOM, just the functionaries who should be working on the GCOM's instruction, take it on themselves to receive evidence? How do they receive this evidence? Does the immigration officer come and hold a Bible and say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and present his evidence? Because as counsel, I will tell you that's how you give evidence. Is that what some minion in GCOM Secretariat is doing without instructions from GCOM itself? How are they doing this investigation that Mr. Alexander feels comfortable to come and tell you about, but nobody else in GCOM knows about? How does he know? And why does he try to pretend to give it some stamp of authenticity, some stamp of approval by coming here to tell you about it, when it is done without the sanction of GCOM, which is the body that makes these decisions? Is he part of the problem? Does he know something we don't know? That is something we have to be worried about. It is time for the chairman of GCOM, now that Mr. Alexander has come to make that statement, to inform Guyana what GCOM's position is on it, whether GCOM has given these instructions, whether GCOM is going to undertake this process of asking some immigration officer to hold a Bible and say, I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so that he can give his evidence. Because I will tell you this, GCOM has its own record. GCOM has its own procedure. And according to GCOM's procedure, when you go to vote, you show your ID, they call your name, they compare your face to their record, and then they allow you to vote. And then they cross your name off to show that you have voted on their list. And if that procedure is followed, then GCOM's record, which GCOM has in there, and which GCOM can't second guess, GCOM's record is that Timothy Jonas voted at LBI on the 2nd of March. And none of you, and nobody from APNU, and nobody from PPP, and nobody else can say to GCOM, Timothy Jonas was out of the country. Because GCOM's record is that I went, showed my ID, put my finger in the ink, and they scratched my name off the list. It's that simple. So if the Secretariat has gone rogue, GCOM needs to address it. Are there any questions?
Mr. Jonas, is your party, does it hold the view that by making a decision to investigate, if it does, is in keeping with the Constitution and the law?
Okay. I anticipated that question. And that question has a number of facets. So let me deal with all of them. The courts have made it very clear in the litany of litigation, Ulita Moore and all of the others, that GCOM is autonomous and independent, and GCOM must do its job properly. Now, that is a wonderful principle one that I subscribe to, and one that any professional body would adhere to. But the whole of Guyana knows that GCOM has been compromised. One only has to look for Mingo and ask his whereabouts today to agree with me GCOM has been compromised. So it's well and good to say, oh, they're autonomous, they're independent, they must do their job. But you hire some people and you don't hire other people and you got good reason for it. And right now, it is my fear and it is my belief that the people we've hired to do this job are compromised. If GCOM is to do its job properly, GCOM will have to use its record of who voted, and that record exists, as I said, by the person who showed his ID, whose name was called and whose name was scratched off, and we'll have to go with that record to announce a declaration. Now, I want you to compare this and contrast it to Mingo's declaration. GCOM's record inside GCOM's house, in their building, included statements of poll. So GCOM was well within its right to look at its own record, its own statements of poll that each of those commissioners has access to, and compare its own record to what one of its officials counted up and assessed, and say something wrong. But GCOM should not go outside of his records to find Mr. Griffith and say to Mr. Griffith, come and give evidence and hold a Bible and swear to tell the truth and tell us if Timothy Jonas was out of the country. GCOM is not qualified to do that. That is for the court. So it would be wrong, in my view, for GCOM to try to do that. And if they did that, I would say that they're acting wrongly. But they got to do their job. Any more questions? We have a quiet bunch today. All right, well, thank you very much. Have a good day, please.